The National Insurance Crime Bureau is celebrating its 100th anniversary this year. The Nicb is a not-for-profit organization dedicated exclusively to fighting insurance fraud and crime. Joining us now to talk more about the organization is Roger Morris, Vice President and Chief of Communications. Now, Roger, how did the Nicb get its start 100 years ago?
Well, John, back in 1912, automobiles were starting to roll off the assembly lines thanks to Henry Ford. And the price tag of about $600 made them expensive, but still much more affordable than earlier custom-made models. And of course, once they became popular, a new breed of business was created, the car thief. The theft of a Chalmers automobile in Chicago that summer drew the attention of Boston insurance company manager Fred Sauter. They insured the vehicle. He wanted it back. So he ordered a woodcut of the vehicle and made posters from that woodcut to send to local police departments. A couple of other companies in the area told him they also had suffered thefts of their insured Chalmers vehicles. And to make a long story short, Fred Sauter came up with the idea of creating a clearinghouse for insurance companies to share information about stolen cars. They formed the Automobile Protective and Information Bureau, which prepared and mailed out reward notices for member companies. That became the National Automobile Theft Bureau in 1927, and in 1992, Nicb merged with the Insurance Crime Prevention Institute to form what is today's National Insurance Crime Bureau.
Roger, what was insurance fraud like back then?
Well, back then the focus was on car theft. Most cars had no locks, no security, and they were ripe for the taking. There was no identification system and no central database across the country to let people know a car had even been stolen. It wasn't until 1954 that U.S. car makers started using vehicle identification numbers, or VIN numbers, to give each car its own identity. And in 1981, the federal government adopted the standard 17-character VIN that paved the way for using computers to analyze databases for car theft.
So how has fraud changed, and how has it stayed the same over the past 100 years?
Well, actually, car theft peaked in 1991 with over 1.6 million vehicles stolen in the U.S. that year. With the advent of better technology and increased law enforcement efforts, thefts have consistently declined over the past several years, and they now stand at about 700,000 a year. It's still an expensive problem, and vehicle theft and recovery remains at the core of what we do at Nicb. But thieves take the path of least resistance. Many of the organized criminal rings now focus on medical fraud, taking advantage of the medical portion of an auto or workers' comp insurance policy to try to rip off insurance companies and honest policyholders. They've also moved to cargo theft and heavy equipment theft because it can be much more profitable with less risk of getting caught. So Nicb is constantly focusing on the changing nature of insurance fraud and adapting as needed to fight it.
So, Roger, what do you see ahead for the Nicb?
Well, there's no shortage of business for us. The criminals are very flexible and very quick to see new opportunities and seize on them. They always seem to be one step ahead, and that's part of the challenge. We work very closely with our member companies to support their efforts and investigate fraud, and we have a special relationship with law enforcement and rely on them to investigate and prosecute the cases. We're always urging for tougher laws and tougher sentences for insurance fraud. And we're trying to increase public awareness of the problem, inviting the public to get involved in fighting fraud through our hotlines and other resources. I don't think Fred Sauter would have ever predicted in 1912 that today's Nicb would be what it is. And I'd be foolish to predict what things will look like 100 years from now. Cars may not even be around in 100 years. But Nicb will continue to adapt and focus on protecting the American people from insurance fraud.
Roger Morris from the National Insurance Crime Bureau, thank you for taking the time to speak with us today.
Thanks, John.
For the latest insurance news, log on to news.ambest.com.